question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so once I wasn't enlightened, I mean, I'd never even heard of enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then I started listening to a couple of, some things that Leif had talked about and listening to you. And had some great experiences of realization of this.
Mm-hmm.
But, lately I've been sort of reading, some of your, or listening to some of your past talks, or even just digesting, here. And I have to say that I see nothing, how can I put this? The words you use to describe this mean nothing to me when I am with this. It's so strange. And only when I sort of maybe a certain level of thought comes in that I can say, well, yeah, maybe that's wondrous. Or, maybe that's fantastic, But, I mean, this is just beyond words or description, is basically what I'm trying to, I think, is what's happening to me.
It is. The words are to help people reach this, stumble on this, find this.
Yeah.
The words have nothing to do with what this is. They're a trick. They're a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
They're a bridge to this, but the bridge is not this. And once you're with this, you don't need the bridge.
I think that's, yeah.
They're a trick.
I mean, who wouldn't want to see
they're a magic
or
spell.
Radiance, all that.
They're a magic,
yeah.
They're a magic spell.
I know.
And once the magic spell has done its work, you don't need to spell anything.
I know. That's exactly. Well, that's a relief. Because I was going to say, well, once I'd never heard about enlightenment, then I was sort of realized, and now I'm not enlightened anymore.
First there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is a mountain.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I used to be enlightened.
Yeah, you used to be. That's what I said. You used to be enlightened.
But all these words like enlightenment and all that are just, they're silly, they're gibberish. They don't really refer to anything. What's really interesting is what this is. And it's not interesting because it has anything to do with even being interesting. It just happens to be.
Well, I know. Yeah. I mean, but it's just so hard to describe or articulate. I mean,
It's impossible.
I know. I know it when I'm there. I see this, but.
It can't be said, it can't be thought, it can't be captured. I mean, that's why it's so tricky trying to teach this. That's why it's like teaching spirituality and all these spiritual schools and all this stuff is such a smoke and mirrors thing because it can't be done. You're trying to talk about something which can't be talked about, communicate something which can't be communicated.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? Well, you have to use tricks.
Yeah. I would
you can't really do it. You have to do something else that, as a result of it, if you're artful enough, but it's not it itself.
To the extent that it's, radiant or wondrous, it's sort of comparative compared to, this sort of ordinary perception.
Sure. I mean, these ways
Transcendent is the closest that I can get.
Sure. I mean, these ways of talking about it are relevant, but they're not accurate.
Right.
But no way of talking about it is accurate because it is transcendent. It is beyond capturing in thought or in definition or specifying. But then once you recognize it, you don't need to because it's available. It's right here. Check it out.
Yeah,
you don't need to define it because here it is.
That's the truth. That is the truth.
I keep seeing myself sort of default back into my old mode of seeing, and I just try to. I know it's one of reality's favorite modes,
Yeah.
but it's sort of like I just want to see this. I just want to see this as energy, please. However I can get there, or at least not in the ordinary way. You kind of have to. At different times, you sort of have to fight harder to do that.
Yeah. Well, you.
That's the challenge, I guess.
You can't cling to this. You can't cling to reality. And so trying to hold it or trying to live in it or trying to, stabilize it or something is going to do the opposite. It's going to push you away. It's going to spin you off into imagination.
Right.
It's when you let go of it. Completely let go of even of wanting it or needing it and even giving a shit about it, that it becomes completely available. And it's ultimately important in being with this to not play one state off against another. Don't play dullness off against clarity. Don't play, neurotic emotionality off against, detachment or something. And it's it's paradoxical the way that works. Because when you find yourself going to old modes, so to speak, or old ways of relating to it, you're actually doing that because of some kind of a subtle grasping.
Right.
And usually it's the opposite of what you think it is, but it's some kind of subtle grasping, some kind of subtle orienting. But the trick of not orienting is not to try to not orienting, because that's orienting to not orienting, which is gonna trap you. You're gonna go down the drain.
Right.
So the trick to not orienting is to forget about orienting. Just give it up. Just say, hey, whatever. You just completely let go.
Right.
And then you're not playing one condition off against another. You're not playing, oh, this is better. I'm kind of steering towards this. As long as you're steering towards something, it actually sends you away from it. In a way.
Right.
So you just sort of just fuck it. Just completely just like, hey, whatever, bring it on. It's all good. And at that point, you're not orienting, and paradoxically, because you're not orienting, you're oriented towards reality.
Right.
So it's sort of the extreme of accepting, but it's not an accepting of aspiring to accept or aspiring to surrender.
Right.
It's an accepting and a surrender because it's already the case. It's just, hey, fuck it, I just don't care. Just like bang, just like you let go.
Right.
And in that looseness, in that easiness, that's what this is.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Right. You just see when you see things.
When you want it, you push it away. It's that simple.
Okay.
You can't want it. You have to not even care if you want it, and then you get it.
Okay.
It's paradoxical.
Right.
It's kind of like trying to go to sleep. You can't go to sleep by trying to go to sleep. You go to sleep by just letting go, and then you go to sleep.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's sort of funny when you see some sort of energy forms or something that you take to be seeing it in your old way, so to speak. It's like, I know this isn't right, but how come I'm still falling for it?
But see, right away there, it's orienting. Just let go of it. It's not right. It's not right. It's just crazy. It's just like whatever. It's like you don't know.
Right. It's like the Northern Lights.
Yes, when you hold anything to be anything, you're orienting.
Right, that's the problem.
And trying, and again, but trying not to hold it is orienting still. So you gotta just drop it, just like completely, just like
Right.
you know, plan B.
Okay. Good.
Or probably better yet, D, none of the above.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But when you orient, you're actually still not orienting. If that's not quite the right term, but you still
Sure.
got it.
Yeah, well, of course you do. You know, it's very paradoxical, but in terms of getting that is the case, you have to come to, you know, you come to the meta orientation, which is beyond orienting and non-orienting. And you don't come to that by orienting, because the problem with orienting is it's liable to pull you back into orienting. It's very slippery. It's like saying, you know, conceptual thought is it, but going into conceptual thought is not liable to be a good route to noticing that conceptual thought is it, because conceptual thought is a sort of a self-verifying whirlpool that is liable to be hard to get out of. It's like it's the old lobster trap, you know.
Yeah.
It's easy to get in, and in that fact you could get out at any time because the door's open, but somehow you don't have the wherewithal.
If you see orienting the way you would see language, is the way Pam was describing it, then orientation is just another language, that's all.
Yeah.
And it's meaningless as anything other than just its energy.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's orienting is a language.
Sure. Yeah.
Words, in a sense. Non-verbal, but it's words. That's how you were saying. It's like the trap is just a place. But
Orienting
doesn't
doesn't matter, but to see that orienting doesn't matter, it helps to not orient.
Well, orient doesn't matter because that's a mode of reality too, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, everything is.
Yeah, exactly so. But to see that, and when you're orienting, it's hard to see that orienting doesn't matter, because orienting is all oriented around mattering.
I know.
So when you give it up, you get it.
You're okay.
You give it up, you get it. When you give up needing realization, then you have it. It's easy. It's like as long as you're going for it, you're orienting towards it, you're pushing it away. You close yourself out of it. I mean, not actually, but in terms of notice, in terms of seeing it. You know?
Yeah, seeing it, right. Great.
But you know, this is really the fine points of the yoga. It's really the fine point is not playing one thing off, not playing one state off against another state.
Yeah.
And it gets to be very subtle.
Right. Yeah.
Because ultimately, you want to be not playing one state off against another state, but you want to be so not playing it off against it that you're not even playing off the state of not playing off one state against another state versus the state of playing off one state against another state.
Right.
So it gets very, very, very subtle.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, it's funny because I've had sort of like revelations, but then I'm sort of like, hey, where did my enlightenment go or something? Like revelations, I mean, they're so strong. They've been so strong in the past, but now they don't seem to be popping up so much. Now it's just like, oh, okay.
Well, there's other aspects to it too, which is that, in earlier stages of unfoldment, your revelations are much more spectacular because it's a matter of contrast.
Yeah, right.
The more you settle into a more and more deeper sort of a baseline of everyday realization, the more it's just normalcy, and the less these flashes happen still, but it's like, oh, okay, that was sort of interesting, as opposed to like, wow, cool, amazing, because the contrast isn't so strong.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So it can seem like, gosh, what happened? The thrill is gone.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I've talked about that, I think, a week or so ago. I felt sort of a resting. I mean, it's just, I've settled in somehow.
Yeah, the transcendental becomes normal. I mean, it's just normal. It's just like every day, like, so what, ho hum. Because it is.
Well,
Because it is.
yeah.
I mean, it's completely transcendental, mind-blowing, et cetera, et cetera. But
Yeah.
it was just everyday, like, take care of business, the usual. What's on TV,
But at the same time, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, fucking awesome. Pretty much sums it up.
I just noticed like tremendous efficiency with dealing with people, I'm
Yeah.
talking to.
Sure.
Went to a conference for 4 days in Sacramento. I mean, I didn't have any trouble talking to anybody, and I mean, it's just like it sort of just like went right through it. Same at the hospital,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
And
just like,
and this is one of the signs of unfoldment proceeding. Is things just get easier. It's like you're just sort of in the flow of the Tao, so to speak, and everything just happens.
yeah,
Everything happens without needing to do anything, and everything gets done without needing to like sweat it or fret it or even give it much attention.
yeah.
Things get very sort of efficient and less noise in the system, you might say.
That's right, yeah.
Without it necessarily being anything in particular, you just sort of notice, wow, gosh.
Yeah, right.
I've been sort of noticing, in my experience, similar things to what you guys have been talking about. And it's been me increasingly just kind of going, okay, fuck it, and not orienting. But then a part of me will kind of start to orient, and I'll just be like, okay, fine, I'm orienting. And so it kind of just ends up being this flow, like, as far as, like,
Exactly.
oh, like, sometimes, like, I go, what am I supposed to be in the world? And how am I going to succeed? And I'm just like, okay, yeah, fuck it, I'll just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
And then, and it's fine. And then there are other moments where I'm like, I couldn't give a shit what I do in the world. I would rather just sit here and look at the sky, and, like, why would I ever want to care what I do in the world? So it waffles back and forth. But
Well, you can go anywhere. When you let go of orienting, then you're free to orient, and it's not, and it doesn't matter because you're not oriented to not orienting or to orienting.
Yeah,
You're free. You're broken free.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's why it's called liberation, because at that point you can do anything. It doesn't. You're bulletproof. You can do anything. You can get lost in thought. You can have emotional tantrums. You can be an asshole. And yet it just you're like Teflon. It just goes. Shh.
Yeah.
It doesn't stick. It doesn't matter because it's just these energy storms that just whirl through, and it has nothing to do with anything. And so I mean, the way they put it technically in spiritual traditions is you're free of karma, which means you're not making new karma. Which doesn't mean that event stops. It just means that nothing sticks.
Right. It's so funny. I feel like I've actually sort of experienced that basically my whole entire life, where things have just kind of slid around to me pretty easily, or like if there's a situation where someone would say like, oh, you need to be guilty about this, I just feel like, I don't feel guilty about that at all. So I'm just gonna pretend.
Well, your baseline is at a relatively evolved level. Let's say your starting point is you're an old soul.
Woohoo, I guess. That's pretty good. It's really bizarre because at some point you're kind of like, oh no, like how am I supposed to function in this weird world? And then it's kind of like
The eternal question.
right? Yeah. So.
Like this one's free. I keep coming back to what you said a while back about the nature of this and how you can actually use the nature of this. And I don't know why that has just seemed so true and has just kept opening up all sorts of things. I mean, even just like the taste of something. I just hate something. So just the taste of something, just as it is is something that opens up.
Yeah.
And I mean, anything, everywhere.
Everything is intrinsically transcendental.
Yeah, intrinsic.
All experience is intrinsically transcendental. So any experience whatsoever, period, which is a pretty blanket statement, is a jumping off point into the transcendental, just as it is, without needing to do anything about it. It's not like you need to put some fairy dust on it or something. It's just whatever it is already a doorway into transcendental, just by being with what it is, because what it is that. It's inherent. It's what it happens to be. I mean, this is the whole, this is sort of degenerating into philosophy, and I apologize, but just to future scholars that are delving through this bullshit. But the whole theoretical basis of Dzogchen is exactly that principle, which they call self-liberation, which means that because in lesser schools of Tantrism, in Tantric Tantrism, the principle is transformation, where you have to purify things. But Dzogchen says everything is already self-liberated. The very nature of what anything is transcendental, is emptiness, is, blah, blah, blah. Throw the technical term of your choice at it. But so you don't need to do anything. All you need to do is notice that is the case, which is possible because it is the case. And so it's absolutely non-effortful. There's nothing that needs to be done, simply noticing that is the case. And the opportunity to notice that is ubiquitous because anywhere you look, that is the case.
Yeah, but this, so yes, absolutely. But this like little instruction, it's like this little instruction or whatever to be able to use this.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking, okay, what about if I get stuck? Well, hey, stuck is cool.
Stuckness is a doorway to transcendence.
Right, whatever.
Yeah.
And it just, so that little, it's like a key.
Yeah, sure.
You can open any lock.
Yeah. I mean, I encoded that whole principle in the name of my website, which is the Open Doorway, which is that any and all experience is intrinsically a doorway to something else, or to more another, to
itself in some
well,
way.
to unlimitedness. I mean,
which is,
and so any starting point whatsoever is not an ending point, but it's a starting point of a journey, essentially, or it's a doorway into, question mark. And this is absolutely true across the board. There's no instance in which that is not the case. So this is a really nice little shortcut into yoga because you just, what do I do? How do I meditate? What do you do? Any experience you're on, just trip. You're experiencing, just trip on it. In short, and bang, you're off and running. And reality communicates itself. The way in which that's so, you discover by looking at the way in which it's so. You can't get it before the fact, but it's self-evident once you notice that it is so, and then when you notice that it is so, you notice the way in which it's so, and then it explains itself, it communicates itself, it shows you how to do it, so to speak. Because it's not logical or rational. It's just the nature of what experience is, what experience happens to be. And since it happens to be that, it is noticeable, discoverable that it is that. And then Bob's your uncle, as they say. I never understood exactly what that's supposed to mean, but it sounds so cool. Yeah, no. And, we were talking earlier about orientation and orientationlessness and all that stuff, and not playing off one quality of one state of experience against another, one quality of experience against another. And again, what shows you how to do that is experience itself. So again, in the starting off point of what we're talking about, just any experience, noticing in the way in which experience itself intrinsically opens. When you experience that, when you see that is the case and see the way in which that's the case, then that shows you what orientationlessness is. Because anything you orient to is actually not that, actually opens. And so the whole question of orienting or not becomes moot. It's too simplistic for the way this actually works. And then when you see that, you learn orientationlessness just directly without even needing to think of it as such. It's intrinsic in the mercurial nature of this, the slipperiness of the way the experience works. It's actually impossible to orient to experience. Because you can't find anything specific.
Too transient.
No, you just can't find anything. In every dimension, in every parameter, it's too slippery. So when you think you're orienting, you have to imagine a stability that you're orienting towards or away from, which means that you're not being with reality in the first place. You're spinning off into some version of it that you're holding in your imagination subtly. But experience itself reveals its slippery nature, and that slipperiness is not imaginary. That slipperiness cannot be thought. It can't even be imagined. It's too weird to imagine it. It's too weird to think it. But when you just see it, and it's self-evident to see it, then you see that that's the case, and all of these other modes of orienting and imagining and all that just reveal their irrelevance to this actuality that happens to be the way that it happens to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all this stuff and all the nuance and all the aspects of what we talk about is really just talking about the nature of experience, which is just one thing. It's just this thing that it happens to be the way it is, and you see that all the nuance and all this elaboration and blah 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 comes with, because it's just one thing in the way that it happens to be, and all these implications are just included and implicit in the nature of this, what this is. It's just one thing to see.
We were listening to a YouTube of Norbu talking about Dzogchen the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And in it he says, Buddha had, I don't remember the qualifier, it was a clarity, it was what I remember, but I'm not sure that that was his word, that was greater than anybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems strange that he was comparing one person's awareness to another person's awareness.
Yeah. I mean, you might just say that at the time he had sufficient clarity to see it how it is and to communicate that effectively. But I wouldn't say that he was like he was the all-star of clarity guys, and everyone else's clarity is playing second fiddle.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case, but it's certainly true that Buddha saw this very profoundly and had the wherewithal, i.e., intelligence and functionality and what have you, to communicate it. So that's pretty good. That's he definitely had some clarity going on there. He wasn't just talking on his ass,
So I got to thinking about this, and it seemed to me that there is something like a wave of energy that is outside of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Buddha somehow or other, and I don't know anything about it, having not been there, managed to make this wave rather large and carry along a lot of other people in a way that some people don't make a wave at all.
Right. I think
Assumptions.
There's a lot of assumptions there.
Yeah.
I think, well, the way I would put that is you're looking at a couple of aspects here. One is, I mean, the wave of energy that's outside of the individual is the transpersonal, and the degree, the profundity with which a person realizes the transpersonal is the depth of their realization. And then the other factor is what I would call the karma of the person, which means their innate functionality, their innate skill level, the nature of their functionality to be effective in the world or not, or to be engaged in the world or not, in the modes that they happen to be talented in. And when all of that happens to align in the right way, I mean, you get the Beatles, or you get some poor bum playing in a bar on the street corner. What's the difference? Well, the Beatles, everything was lined up. This was all clicked. It all clicked, and with the Buddha, it all clicked. Which is what I would call. I mean, obviously, he had a profound realization, he had a deep realization. So he had a deep, orientation to the transpersonal, and again, he was John Lennon. He had the, or better yet, Paul McCartney. He had things were lined up in his functionality in such a way that he was effective. He was charismatic to whatever extent, or God knows what, right? But he had the right stuff to make all of that to be the epicenter of all of that happening, taking off. I mean, and this is interesting. I mean, this is like you find people who realize people. You look at, you can find a bunch of realized people, and what they look like in the world in terms of their realization can be very, very different. One of them seem to be a complete non-entity, or just seem to, you wouldn't know anything. Another person is a teacher, or another, who knows what, right? And so but that doesn't. It's not a one-to-one relationship between that and their realization.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, some people naturally are, for want of a better term, extroverts and have
or just different skill sets, or different kinds of functionalities, or different bandwidths of effectiveness, or God knows what, right? If their minds work in different ways, or what have you, right?
Also, in the case of the Beatles, they were lined up with the whole cultural milieu.
Well, yeah, but everything, that's what I mean when I say everything lines up.
Yeah.
You know, the inside and the outside and the personal and the objective and everything was just, all the gears were like, zoop, all of a sudden everything was meshed.
Yeah. I was watching a documentary about Martin Luther King Jr. and that comes across too. It's like he's really integrated and at the center of this whole sort of storm of movement that
But you find that anytime you find these kinds of you know, historical events that are centered around people where things just pop and take off in a big way. You know, I mean, you look at you know, Jesus Christ, you look at Buddha, you look at the Beatles, you look at, you know, all these kinds of situations, and it's, you know, it's the similar. The mechanism is all the same. It's just an alignment. A karmic alignment, you might say. And then when that karmic alignment is also aligned with a spiritual alignment, with a realization of the transpersonal, that's when you have these powerful spiritual events.
But it's also something charismatic as well.
Yeah, well, that's part of the alignment. That's part of what lines up.
Okay. Because I was thinking, you know, when the Beatles did whatever they did, there were 101 musicians doing pretty much what they were doing.
Sure.
Who didn't quite, you know, look at Herman's Hermits.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I remember. That's not. How about Donovan?
Well, but Herman's Hermits played in the cavern and they did all those things that, you know.
No, there was the Beatles took off.
Well, they had that.
And you look at, you know, and I mean, and you can look at that in politics, you can look at that in business. Bill Gates, why him, you know?
Yeah, really.
You know, and you can look at that in spirituality. I mean, but again, you know, it's a mistake to confuse the you know, the relationship between the effectiveness of something that seems to be oriented around one person and spirituality itself.
That's right.
It's a big mistake to confuse those, because the important thing is realization, and how that shows up in your life is completely irrelevant. And you may become the next Jesus, or you may you know, just be a wino all your life or whatever, right? It's like, but that's not what matters. It's the realization that matters.
Peter, there's no actual people. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, this
No.
no actual people were harmed.
Very good, Larry.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, when I talk about these, you know, sort of waves of karmic alignment, think of it as waves of karmic alignment, if you want, and leaving aside for the moment exactly what we mean by that.
Yeah, right.
You know, and so, you know, I mean, a person in a sense, such as they are, is made of waves of karmic alignment and or disalignment.
Yeah.
You know, and so all of the aspects of a person, you know, their embodiment, their functionality, so on and so forth, are just the way these karmic waves are, you know, synchronized or not synchronized. I mean, just a very, very complex waveform or something, right?
Yeah. It's sort of like the one, whatever is doing all this, or what it just can you come up with anything.
Yeah.
There's a tendency to imagine a self and also, like one's own self, and also project self of others.
Yeah.
And
Like-
at one's experience.
But again,
Yeah,
but like we were talking about earlier, when you see what experience is, you directly see the way in which that's not the case.
Yeah. I mean,
Because
like,
you go looking for a self, and you go, woo!
I was thinking that in terms of like you know, John Boehner and Barack Obama. It's like you can think of it in a personal way, or you can just see it as forces, energies,
Sure.
just playing themselves out.
Yeah, of course.
Mhm.
There's not much karmic alignment there.
So
Actors, sure.
Well, there's sufficient karmic alignment that they're in the news.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
fun to do their tarot charts. But seeing the sort of the transpersonal is it's almost akin to sort of magic.
It's completely
In a
magic.
sense,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah. And when you see the transpersonal, you discover what the personal really is.
yeah,
Because there is no personal. The
yeah,
personal is just, seems to be the personal because the transpersonal is the way it is.
yeah. I was just thinking about how sometimes my imagination can just sort of take off. There's certain aspects of it that it is magic. I mean, it's totally aligned with, with the
Sure, absolutely.
the transcendent me, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And, it's just incredible what can be done.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still working on the out-of-body experience. I stare up at that tree. I have my binoculars now, and I look up at that tree. I'm getting close. But I mean, it's that kind of playfulness, that kind of experience.
Oh, man. I want what she had.
You got what she had.
I know.
Pass that.
Yeah, whatever it is.
There's an
Pass it
out-of-body experience up in the tree.
Well, I mean, I want to be up in the tree where this hawk is,
Okay.
and sort of be looking back
Right.
From there.
from there,
Be-
but also be
from
standing
the-
safe. Yeah, I mean,
Well, but if you're the hawk, you are safe up there.
yeah.
Yeah, you're
The
there.
silly human down there going,
No, it's so the idea of being in two places at once,
been there.
like Maharaji did.
It's scary.
Right.
Well, traditions admonish historically always beware of chasing after cities.
After what?
Cities,
Cities.
magical powers.
Right.
Something like that.
Because
Yeah.
they're liable, not because
Yeah.
there's anything wrong with it, but because they're liable to be a seduction and ultimately a confusion factor.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, there was, Don Juan. I mean, there was a lot of admonitions about that.
Yeah, all the spiritual traditions have that,
Yeah.
one degree or another.
Alistair Crowley even,
Sure.
I mean, he didn't acknowledge it enough, but I mean, he did.
Seems like we're like kind of just like everything else. That'll just probably just happen one day randomly. Like everything, it just takes no effort.
Well, that's the nature of cities is that when you don't orient to them, you have them.
Yeah.
When you orient to them, you may or may not have them, but they'll be anchors.
Yeah.
Whether or not you have them, they'll be an anchor just because you're orienting to them.
Yeah. Well, cities.
So, but again, it's very subtle because not oriented to it doesn't mean not doing it. It means not oriented to it.
Oh, okay.
What we seem to be talking about cities as though it's anything different than what we already do.
No.
Any sort of minor, even almost inconsequential talent or leanings that we have is a city.
Well,
Like being able
yeah.
to do anything that, say, other people say, look, I wish I could do that. That thing is a city,
Of course,
in a sense.
of course.
And
And
I'm
more
talking about much
profoundly,
selfish.
everything is a city. Thinking
That's what
is a
I'm saying.
city.
Exactly.
Dreaming is a city. Imagining is a city.
Precisely.
Yeah, and not just in a sour grape sense. I mean, really, fucking is.
Yeah. Well, it's really funny. Kids recognize that too. Kids just love. I don't know. We have this friend who could sort of make a mouse out of his handkerchief. I mean, he would just do this kind of stuff, and the kids would just be transfixed.
Yeah, sure.
And they were just
Yes.
totally there. And And Bookie really had sort of a talent there. You know?
A lot of us probably seen kids, that moment when they first balance on a bicycle,
Yeah,
that's a city they've just developed, in
Yeah.
a sense. The look on their faces is like, magic has just happened to them, you know? And
Yeah.
it's,
But flying around treetops is a little different.
well, I didn't say I
Yes,
fly
yes,
around.
yes and no.
it depends how you mean that. It's
All we
words,
need
that's
is a
just
room where
words.
there's a witch living in 86 Arlington.
An old hag up on the tree!
Yeah.
Call the fire department!
Honey, these days you can hang out a shingle. They come and interview you for the local
Right,
paper.
that's right, you can make a few bucks. Let me show you how to get up on the tree.
Probably, thank God I won't be here. I'll probably trash the house.
Peter, you were saying it's not that unusual from the other thing? You said something.
Which isn't
Well, John said, well, treetops is a whole different order of things. And then you said, well, it's not that much, it's not that different.
No, there are no treetops.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that facetiously. I mean literally, there are no treetops. And we're all flying around with wild abandon all the time. I mean, right now, look at your experience. It's just like, woo! That's what that is, flying around, and you're flying around.
Right?
And treetops are small, and you are huge. You are vast.
Yeah.
Flying around treetops are small potatoes.
I think when we say things like that, though, like that's different or something, is we're playing with words in the same way that words hypnotize us into thinking that we don't see this.
Exactly. That's the nature of
That's
magic.
right.
There's a lot of
It
ways
is.
to see things.
Exactly.
And simultaneously that seem to be very different, and none of them are true and none of them are untrue. But that fact gives you flexibility. It gives you options. It gives you freedom, openness. You know, the implications of there's a lot of ways to skin a cat.
Oh, dude. Not that I want to skin her.
Super transit.
Trippy. Any questions from the internet?
No, not yet. That's very really quiet there. Whose KKBD is that, Fred?
Oh, no, I've seen
Or is that
KKBD.
the Georgia woman? No.
No.
Identify yourself.
Identify yourself, no? That's from, what's his name, Buckaroo Banzai. I remember, they told me who they are, but I can't remember what it was they said.
Just a doorway into transcendence anyway.
Yes, sir.
You're looking at who anyone is, all you find is God if you look hard enough. So.
Oh, he is left.
In a huff.
Didn't want to.
Yeah,
We're on the
enough.
leak.
What is
Yeah.
this? It's a nice, tough man. These people are all high on something.
So this karma thing is like totally weird.
It's completely weird.
because as like a former person that was stuck in men's belief and being torn every direction from all kinds of ideas of what
Sure.
stuff should be, there's this idea like, oh, you make your own karma, which is totally true, but you just kind of make it up, right? So I'm kind of trying to understand how, I don't know, it seems like sometimes people just say like, oh, you make your own karma, like I'm going to be a good person.
No.
But it really like you kind of trick yourself into thinking, oh, I did a good thing. Now I'm going to notice the good things that happen to me after that, right? So you,
Yeah,
right.
but thinking of karma as cause and effect or good and bad is extremely trivializing and partializing it. Karma is the specifics of everything.
Right.
Like the color that your hair happens to be, the shape that your body happens to be,
Right.
you know, what time you happen to wake up this morning, you know, the state of that your digestion happens to be in. I mean, it's just all this stuff, the way it happens to be, all the specifics, that the entire sum total of the specifics in your universe, in your units, is your karma.
Yeah.
And it's an infinite field of alive meaningfulness that's completely interactive and completely evolving. I mean, it's continually evolving and unstable, and it's also transcendental, which makes it very, very weird indeed. Because with all those specifics, you can't actually find any specifics because all the specifics are transcendental.
Right.
So it's very weird. So we have the fact that you are exactly what you are at any given moment, and the totality of the universe of your life is exactly what it is at any given moment in terms of what it looks like, but it's all also transcendental. So that's the sort of the gestalt of what's going on with karma. And, you know, of course you can't actually pin that down or describe it rationally to somebody, but you can see it. And so it is, the specifics are the way they happen to be. And in a certain sense, you could say you make your karma in the sense that you are that which is making your karma, in a very actual sense.
Right.
But it's not like, oh, I think tomorrow I'll be, you know, tomorrow I'll be a teenage girl and, you know, living in Taiwan, and it doesn't quite work like that for most people, I guess. I mean, if you can find a way to swing that kind of stuff, go for it. But
Becoming that fox. So.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, but so to a certain extent, karma gives you power to interact karmically.
Right.
So if you're, like, say you're a person who's effective in the world, that it's your karma that you're effective in the world, and because you're effective in the world, then you can be effective in the world, which is engaging with your karma in a different way. Or it may be your karma that you can't be effective in the world.
Right.
So then in a certain sense, it looks like you're not doing so much making, but it's not literally true. It's just that's the nature of your flavor.
And while that's going on, like all these other opposite things could be just going on because that's just what it is.
Yeah,
like all these other energies.
yeah. But the real trick with karma is that it's transcendental.
Yeah.
That's the back door. That's the secret. That's the, you know. So even though karma is what it is, and even though you have whatever degree of flexibility you have to interact within your karma karmically, you're not actually stuck in it because it's transcendental.
Right.
So karma is present and is actual, but is not entrapping.
Yeah.
Because it's transcendental. And so discovering that fact that it's transcendental is what liberation looks like. Because then all of a sudden, you are you, and you are in your life, but you're not in it.
Right.
You're not stuck in it. You're not trapped in it. You're not bound by it in any sense. And so at that point, it becomes a hoot. And then you can interact within your karma to the extent that you're karmically capable of interacting within your karma, right? But it doesn't really matter a whole hell of a lot, because you know you're not going to get anything or lose anything by doing that. It's just part of the way it works that's the case.
And there's no such distinction.
Yeah.
There's no such distinction.
But that's distinction between what and what?
You and karma. You
Yeah.
are your karma.
Right.
Your karma
Sure.
is you. You can't make
Yeah.
karma. You can't. I mean, there's
No.
no distinction.
No.
It's just another word for I.
Well, people don't understand what karma really is. People think karma is
It's a
like
cause and
like
effect.
cause and effect of like be a good boy and good things will happen. You know, it's like,
Sin,
wouldn't that be nice?
I don't even see that it's anything at all.
You know.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Literally.
No, because it's transcendental. Right. That's the other side of the coin. It's not anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So why even talk about it?
Well, what else are you going to talk about?
Yeah.
That's what words are made for, is to talk about karma.
Not enough. It's her fault.
I mean, I'm not trying to whatever. But it's just, it's like I used to worry, have notions about like, what is time, right? And there's any time.
Yeah.
And then it dawns on me after a while, the whole thing's a moot point.
Yeah.
It just simply doesn't matter.
Though, it's such
Right.
A word.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you're like, why am I talking?
Yeah.
Why did I bring it up?
Yeah, when you get to the point, you lose the point.
I was teased.
You don't lose the point, you miss the point.
But it seems to me, you know,
If you miss the point, you get the point.
I don't know.
Exactly.
But in that, I don't know, it's like karma, you could say anything about it, you would just simply be this what this is.
Yes.
It is, it's a funny word to put on it, but so what?
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, so why is it freeing? It's because there's literally nothing you have to do anything about.
Right. That's the aspect of it that it's like, I mean, it's always, you know, the challenge is always words, because words partialize things. You know, karma is specifically talking about the aspect of this which appears to be patterned and embodied in specifics, and which is the case, but that isn't the totality of the case as in exactly that way, because it's also transcendental, which means that it's not actually anything, as you so accurately said. So the actuality is neither addressable by the vector of karma or the vector of transcendence, but is that actuality which can be described in terms of being karma and in terms of being transcendental. So in the actuality, you find, you know, again, you find that it, no surprise, transcends ways of talking about it, which of course is a given. You know, but because in words and ideas we have these partialized sort of, you know, call them vectors of analysis or you know, axes of analysis or what have you. You can look at things in terms of their patterning, look at things in terms of their transcendence, look at things in terms of their, you know, causality, look at things in terms of, you know, whatever. And it's not that those things don't exist, it's that the way in which they exist transcends being consisting of the way of that way of being limited to that way of looking at it. So all words are true, but truth is beyond the sum of all words.
Ouch.
I know, right?
Can you repeat that?
I will repeat that in another way by saying it's break time. We'll be back in 10 minutes or so.
Another cup of chai.
Share our revelries. Share our revelries with the online friends.
All right. There's Lily.
Yep, okay, bye.
There
goes Lily.
I don't know, I've been jumped up all day. I went on a run this morning at like 7:30. And I was the whole day, I'm just like wired, I don't know. Anyways, watch out.
I had very little of it. I had
Just sort of a time delay.
A little what, honey?
Time delay.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What did you make it with now?
There's that. I'm surprised Jeff didn't get in on that Buddha discussion.
Hey Jeff, how come you didn't get in that Buddha discussion?
I didn't hear fucking Buddha or anything.
They're probably not even listening, they're probably.
He's probably not even.
Probably playing fairway golf or something. Well, that KKD usually is there.
Yeah, no, I don't want to hear it again. It was confusing enough the first time. Thank you. He doesn't either, right?
So that's good, that's good. That's the direction I want to go.
Yeah.
On a scale that agree with you.
It just seemed that way when I walked in.
You seem like you.
And-
Well, you seem like you.
Yeah.
I wrote a few thousand.
Friday, what am I doing Friday?
No, absolutely, no wrong with that.
Yeah, before lunch, you mean, for the door? Yeah.
Did you answer?
They don't have
We're having trouble with the speaker.
They don't have
We're having trouble with.
a door that opens out. No, I had to bring them both back. So I have to have an outward door on a right hand out. That's what he said, that's what he wants. 36 by 80, so I have to call around and see if I can find that somewhere. He could probably fix one up, but I got a feeling maybe he just like one ready made with a frame in it and everything, you know.
I'm in the direct line of stay there, you're blocking
Blocking
that.
Yes, I am. Oh, that's good stuff. You have to have some stuff.
There's apple blackberry today.
It's got gluten in it, but hey, who cares? Gluten. Careful on this, right? Start.
Yeah. And,
Used to the spacewalk.
I used to put my kids in socks when we wax the floors and make them polish it.
That's a good one. And of course, kids like doing that.
I drag them around.
Yeah, kids like doing that.
Yeah. But I learned that from my mom.
Oh, yeah?
That's fine. So it's been handed down for generations. It's made us for me.
That's right.
Come over to Betty's house, I'll wax those floors.
That's right, we gotta wax the floors. Get your little butt over
Yeah,
here.
that's right, we'll put a little pillow around her butt.
Oh, yes! And then pull her.
Yeah.
And the socks on her feet, so she's sitting like this, you know? And you just pull her, she'd love it.
Yeah. No answers to the peanut gallery.
Rhubarb. What was it you looked up? You saw on the internet the other day, but rhubarb is really good for something or other, the blood pressure or something. I don't know. You were reading, you were reading
I can't
to me
remember
something. It was
now.
about rhubarb and something about
Oh.
some spectacular way that rhhubarb is like the
Good
best
for your
thing
blood
for
pressure or
whatever.
something, right. I don't remember now. Sorry,
Is
honey.
your still, things still working?
Is your lab still going?
I forgot. Did new ones. No longer.
How you doing today, Irma? Good. I'm good.
Hey, who would do that?
Is that you?
How did all that come out? How did people react to the environment? About the movie?
Okay.
Why were they thinking this way?
Mm.
Why were they a believer?
This pie is wonderful. I like pies that are just completely mushy.
Mushy?
I like food in general that's completely mushy.
What?
I like food that's completely mushy.
Yes, you do. This is why you often make your dinners oatmeal and things like that.
Mm-hmm. That's why.
They're like mush.
Expensive the crap out of that. Peter's MacBook Air.
Well,
I like how MacBook Air is capitalized, but not Peter.
I know, right?
I know, what's up with that?
It's 'cause I entered the Peter and they entered the Mac, but I don't use capitals on the computer
There you go.
No, he doesn't. True.
unless I'm writing some letter or something
Yeah.
and they expect it.
Me, on the other hand, I'm completely compulsive obsessive. I punctuate, put capitals, indent my paragraph, take space between paragraphs. Oh,
It's
God.
only right.
Reading Suzanne's emails are funny because there's absolutely no punctuation all through it. And I'm reading it, it's fun in a way. It's really fun in a way. But it's like, oh, it's like learning English all over again. It's not like she doesn't know how to do it, it's just she doesn't use it.
I've tried that way, but it just
And it goes
That's against the
my
grain.
Yes,
Yeah.
it goes against my grain. It just, I
our
cannot do it.
training anyway.
People do
Yeah.
like the number 2 and the letter U, like you, like,
Oh, I
do
know.
like the,
Well, I do that in text messages. In text messages, I take all kinds of liberties.
oh, there you go. Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah,
I
because
can't
it's
do it
quicker.
there, I can't do it.
Yeah, but there's so much you can.
Really?
There's
Even
so
though
much-
you
I
can't?
do it. I type it out. Actually, I speak text. I talk to it and
Oh, well, yes, if you speak to it, then it does do
weird.
it for you.
I don't know. I know like 2 other people that speak text. Jeremy, and Jerome.
Oh.
So
Well, see,
we're in a league of our own.
yeah, if you speak it, then it will put it down right, which is nice.
Punctuation is a kind of language of its own.
It is, because it'll emphasize certain words. It'll tell you how to, the inflection of the sentence, of the phrase itself. It's important, right? I don't know. I learned English the hard way, so for me, it was fun to learn it that way. And it made sense to learn it that way, because it made the language more understandable. Hey, Jeremy, and what sounded like run-on sound started taking shape.
Yeah.
How old were you?
I have to pay the deposit.
Yeah, so I'll take care of that.
In the minute.
I had Spanish down, but
Thanks.
Yeah, you
English was difficult, because it doesn't
Alright.
have any steadfast rules, really.
Well, do you actually remember starting to understand English?
Oh, I was compulsive, what do you call, billboard reader.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and sounding it out, of course, it was all wrong, but I would read every billboard we drove past. It was like, until I figured out what things were. In front of the pictures, there's always all kinds of pictures on there. I would start to do some stuff.
But in terms of actually understanding English and so the syntax and
I
stuff.
vaguely remember
Remember that part?
the time when all of a sudden I noticed that 50% of my thinking was in English.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, oh, now that's interesting. There's a shift
Did
happening.
it feel very different to you?
Yeah, and even now, sometimes if I spend a lot of time speaking with somebody in Spanish, my thinking goes to Spanish, and I notice that my mouth feels strange if I speak English.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Because the vowels and all that is different. And so my mouth feels foreign to me for a little while. And when my mother was still alive and I get on the phone with her, and the girls were little, still living at home, I get off the phone and they say, "Mom, you got your accent back." And it's like, it would disappear almost instantly, but the first few words were heavily accented. I enjoyed reading and learning a second language, and I understood and spoke a little bit of French when I left, when I was still in Cuba. But then learning English was so hard that I just didn't pay any more attention.
English is a mongrel language, so it doesn't have consistent rules.
No, it doesn't. French wasn't so bad because it's the same root language as
Well,
Spanish.
French is a mongrel. Most of the Latin languages are consistent.
So
But English is, a loose conglomeration of a half dozen languages with
Yes.
just hodgepodge together.
Yeah.
So there's no consistent set of rules.
It is funny.
I'm really interested though in those kind of transitions that people experience, Like
Yeah.
the one language to another, for
Yeah.
example, or conscious qualities of various kinds.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you know, another thing I noticed is that there is concepts and connotations and subtleties that exist in one language and one culture that is not translatable. And I've seen that when I've read a book that's Spanish on one side, English on the other, and the translation in English often is attempting to come close, but it isn't the same meaning at all.
Well, but how about like reading Neruda or something in Spanish? You know?
Well, I think I did that with Neruda, and that was one of the places where I
It's
found,
good in English, but I only.
but it's not the same.
Well, but is it?
There's subtle difference in the meanings, because there'll be a phrase, it's very distinctly that language,
Yeah.
belongs to that language and culture.
You know, like Bob's your uncle or something.
Okay, Bob's your uncle, exactly, yeah, what language is that? What is that from?
Bob is too
That's
okay.
him, it's probably in English.
Bob es tu tío, so
Very
what?
good, very good.
Mariana es mi tía también, so who cares? So where does Bob's your... Peter's dad gave me a book once that was titled Heavens to Betsy, and it was the explanation of the origins of all those sorts of things. I don't know what happened to that book. It was a fun book.
Do you remember what Heavens to Betsy is?
Yes, Betsy had to do with the flag.
Ah.
Heavens to Betsy, the stars. She put them on the
Oh,
flag.
okay.
So that's where it came from.
Who'd have thought? Are we back?
Okay, we're back.
Damn it.
All right, we're back.
We're back. Heavens to Betsy.
We're
We're
back.
officially back.
It strikes me, Peter, how enjoyable it is to be able to kind of like be back. You know?
I know, right? Magic. We're back now.
It's so completely arbitrary, but it doesn't
We're
matter.
back.
You can just go ahead and do whatever it is you want to do.
That's
So
right.
kind of like complete make-believe.
That's right. That's right.
Like everything, yeah.
Yeah,
We're doing magic here.
yeah.
Susan doesn't talk.
Oh, Susan must be, oh yeah, talk to her office maybe?
Yeah.
He's talking to a Swami at the yoga can't get his video thing working.
Oh.
Really?
Helping out.
His audience,
Once IT, always IT.
Poor Susan. All right.
Yeah, she showed me the photo of the supercomputer that she built. My God, what? Incredible.
Isn't that supposed to be top secret?
Yes, yes. Secrets from Lawrence Lab, we better not put them on the internet.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, I'm sure the government's involved in it somehow.
Uh-huh.
Just mention that in conjunction with a few other words.
Hide it in between the lines.
I want to put on record, I'm having no part of this conversation.
You're not here.
You are not here.
You're not here.
Actually,
John, you have
you're not here. John has nothing to do with it.
This isn't even my house or my laptop or anything.
It's not.
you don't know these things.
You spying on yourself.
Yeah.
Slaves.
That's right, let's blame it on later.
Since he's the only attorney.
Yeah, I guess we've all just bugged our own houses, haven't we?
Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm. You think it was a bug door?
Well, even better than before.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see the chat. How did that happen? I've never been able to see the chat before.
You do what?
Because you went.
You can see the
You must have switched it. You switched screens.
Don't know. Anyway, there you
Oh,
go.
that's great. Maybe it's something new.
All these satsangs are going to be,
Nice to get
kept in
it
someplace
tonight.
in Nevada or something.
Oh, Jeff Cadillac, what Jeff says.
Future mining.
Tom says, I'm waiting for you guys to get it.
Jeff says that.
Yeah.
He's being smart ass.
Right. Karma, right?
That's right,
Plan
karma.
itself.
Karma, Jeff.
Jeff is on that screen?
Yeah. The whole chat room is on his screen for some reason.
Oh, the chat room is in there.
Never had it before. Now all of a sudden the chat room's there. So yeah.
So you can answer the question
Whatever.
straight away.
That's right, you can ask.
Oh, you're game?
Yeah, now they're in trouble.
I really
Well,
like it because you'll be peering right into the screen.
I will-
Reading the question.
It's far too small writing for me to read it.
Get tabs, but not.
Oh, see, you started, Pam.
Peter, I was noticing today, just walking around my backyard as I do, and there's always been a dichotomy in my mind, or my understanding, or my philosophy of my, my way of orienting to the inner and the outer. There's a difference there, and I've always been interested in noticing the difference between the subjective, not the I-ness so much, but the mind and the stream of consciousness that goes on and all the energy flows. You close your eyes and there's just a whole world of energy, and there's depth, and there's all kinds of stuff. You open your eyes and here's this solid wall of matter, and the energy to see, there must be a similarity somewhere. And I was noticing today that when I'm looking at the inner world, I see this, and then this, say a dream comes up, even or a daydream. This memory comes up, and you're doing something, and then this comes up totally different. And in the outer world, it just seems like there's my backyard and the hawk sitting in the tree, whatever it may be. And what I was really catching today is that my attention is doing the same thing in the outer world as it's doing in the inner world.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
The idea that the backyard is just your backyard and it's sitting there is just that, an idea. Because your experience of the backyard is not a stable thing.
Yes.
And the idea that there's a stable backyard there is actually just an idea. Again, there is no stable backyard any more than there's a stable room here. You're looking here and you're looking there and you're looking there and you blink and then you're looking here and then you're thinking of something. And so the experience is dancing around with, absolute multidimensionality. And there's no coherence or consistency among it other than what is supplied in your imagination and your narrative. And then, a belief. But it's more than just a belief. It's also a synchronicity of meaningfulness, which is part and parcel of the way the inherent intelligence works.
It makes a gestalt of the backyard and holds it there.
Yeah.
I seem to be looking from place to place in that, but that's a belief, because when I
Yeah.
look at this point,
There's no gestalt. All there is the actual lookings, each of which are little unique vignettes that happen instantaneously and non-repetitively.
and the thing that I was really catching about that was that certainly I understood the tension moving from here to here and there to there, but it was on like a screen with the picture of the thing. But that picture, if I look at the picture as a whole, but I'm focusing here, it's a different picture.
Right.
And then I focus here, it's a different picture. It's not
Right.
the same picture, a different part of it. It's a
Right.
different picture.
Yes, exactly.
It fades out here.
Yeah, exactly
and
so.
this
Yeah.
fades out here.
Yeah, good observation. Exactly so.
And in that way, then finally there's a unification between the inner,
Yeah.
stream of consciousness and the outer attention bouncing around.
Yeah.
And there's no solidarity.
Right.
And of course, I realized then that this is a belief that there's a solid world.
Right.
And then I made of course, philosophically, I made a connection with Drake Show, which is just cutting
Right.
through solidarity. This
Yeah.
is the solidarity that you need to cut through.
Right. And cutting through the solidarity is simply seeing that is a belief, and then you've cut through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Experience always orients itself like a mandala, because of the very nature of what we call focusing is that there will always be a sort of a center or a nexus that seems to have some kind of emphasis, and then a fading out into some degree of meaninglessness or noise or less differentiation. And this can be found across the board in every dimension. I mean, not just in the physical sensory dimensions, but in mentality too. Everywhere and anywhere you look, it always sort of organizes itself as a mandala with a sort of an apparent center of focus, and then gradually, graduatedly, inclusively fading within an infinite continuum. On a dynamic basis and a multidimensional basis and blah, blah, blah. So it's endlessly slippery, but still will tend to always orient itself in these mandalas.
It's like a kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
But the unifying thing is experience.
Yeah, that's
The rest is all just...
Well, all of this is experience. It's the way experience seems to present itself.
To appear.
It's just phenomena.
And within all of these dimensions, yeah. Within all of these apparent dimensions of bandwidth, of sort of, palettes of texture, you could call it. There's a palette of texture which we think of as visual, and a palette of texture which we think of as sound, and a palette of texture which we think of as thought, and other, an infinite range of these palettes of texture. And the focus of awareness sort of dances within these multidimensionally.
And awareness is the mystery.
Well, it's all a mystery, but yeah, sure.
I mean, awareness is really the...
All of these specifics that are showing up within awareness are artifacts of awareness. So awareness they come with awareness, part and parcel, and vice versa. There's no basis for differentiating awareness and these dimensions that awareness seems to operate within.
Yeah,
They're one and the same.
Is coterminous with the infinite number of mandalas that are in my backyard that I thought was a single unit.
Yes.
I can refer to as my backyard. No, I don't have a backyard.
That's right. You lost your house, and you've gained infinity.
I'm still working.
Good deal.
The only apparent palettes and mandalas and all of that is in language, because there's only always this.
Well, I would argue with that. I would say, yeah, in terms of palettes per se and mandalas per se.
In reality.
But in terms of experience,
of an understanding
is very dimensional. Yeah, it's continuous, but it's a continuity that tends to have focus. Focus is a meaningful thing, and it's not just an idea. It's not just a word.
I'm not saying it doesn't have focus. I'm saying that
that's what we're talking about.
There's no palettes, and focus is always here.
There's texture. The experience has infinite range of texture.
But only in language.
No.
Distinction is only.
On the contrary, no, that's not true.
That's my experience.
You can have no language whatsoever, and vision is still vision.
Yes.
Vision is not going to disappear or stop being whatever it is because you stop using words on it.
But vision is a loose way of putting what the experience is, because the vision.
Oh yeah, vision isn't the word vision.
The vision that is seen in the mind, or the vision that's seen supposedly with the eyes,
right.
Put in language, is no different as being than the hearing that is heard in the mind, or the hearing that's heard with the so-called ears.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's all different dimensions.
So, but you were calling those palettes.
Yeah, that's just a way of referring to it. I'm not defining them.
And I wasn't arguing with you. I was just pointing out that the only distinction there is as palettes is in language, not in actuality.
Is what it is, I guess.
Right. And I think that, again, language tends to suck us into thinking that we are now focused here and all this is diffused in here and this is diffused. No, there's always just this here, regardless of what it appears to be like. See what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying.
Center of the universe.
If you will, you'd have to have universe for there to be just the center. So.
Peter, let me ask you this question. The other day I was I was thinking about what exists beyond the oval of seeing, you know?
Right?
And I was just putting my attention on it, like, beyond that thing, on each side of it. Can you focus on that? Because I was thinking when I did that, I feel what it is, but it it has its own special content. But that's no more or less significant than this.
No. That's the point.
So I could go live there if I wanted, right?
You do.
Yeah.
You live there, you live here, you live everywhere that is present.
Yeah, right.
And most of where you live, most of what is present is beyond specification, beyond cataloging in words.
Yeah.
Words can't refer to it.
Right.
We can talk about what's in our field of vision, and you can't talk about what's outside your field of vision in the dimension of vision.
Yeah, right.
There's no words for it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, it's sort of like this is a small subset of this giant thing out there.
Yeah, and every aspect of experience is exactly that. Anything you can talk about, with that referring to objects or functionings of experience is a tiny, 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 tiny little portion of this vastness that you actually inhabit.
Right.
Most of it is completely no language has been developed to refer to it.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely actual.
Sure, yeah, for sure. I mean, you can, it's kind of restful. I mean, you can
Totally.
focus on it.
Yeah.
It's great. It's
Oh,
there,
yeah.
but it doesn't mess with you, so to speak,
Yeah, because there's no samskaras there. There's no tendency to orient to it as being this or that, because again, our orienting is done around imaginary specification. In other words, you imagine you specify something, differentiates this into that, and then you can orient to it and grasp to it and want it or not want it or whatever.
Yeah.
But all the stuff that's so vague that we don't even specify it, you don't do anything. You don't bother to do anything about that.
Yeah, right.
Because you're not used to thinking there's anything there to do anything about.
Yeah, right. So you can keep you can put your focus on that, like this mandala
Totally.
effect we were talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I was putting my focus on both at the same time, both
Yeah.
sides of the, so to speak, both
Yeah.
sides of the oval.
Sure, yeah. Or you can do this. Look at the field of vision, and while you're holding that, be with the field of sound, and hold that with the field of vision, and then hold the field of sensation, and keep them all there, and then the field of thought, and so they're all just sort of all of these fields just sort of floating in their relative dimensions, and then go outside of all of that, of any of them, and feel what's there.
Right.
And then go outside that and feel what's there, and then go outside
you
that
can do
and feel what's
too,
there.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
I was wondering if that being outside the oval is the same as sort of being in deep sleep.
Sure.
Waking up
Sure it is.
and being in deep sleep. Is it the same as that, or is deep sleep a special kind of rubric?
Well, there's infinite ranges and infinite degrees of these actualities.
Yeah.
Experiential. There's infinite dimensions, infinite experiential actualities, you could say.
Yeah. And you're in them all anyway, so you can go hang out in them anytime you want. I mean,
Sure.
it's better than meditation in a certain way.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's what meditation actually is.
Right.
I mean, the actual people. Beginners, they think, meditate, I have to still my mind. So I think they're trying to still the mind. It's so much easier than that. All you do is go to a portion of experience where the mind is stilled.
Yeah.
And then you have still mind without needing to bother to still the mind.
Right. Where the mind doesn't exist.
Or you go to complete darkness. You don't need to stop all light or pluck your eyes out. Just go to a portion of experience where there's no light.
Yeah, that's easy too.
It's totally easy. It's completely easy.
It's like the layers of an onion in one dimension.
Yeah, and there's infinite layers.
There's infinite layers, but they're all on the same layer.
Very cool.
In my father's mansion are many rooms.
Yeah. So you can't go to all these places, so to speak, right?
Sure.
But why not just hang out here?
Well, here is all those places.
Yeah. So
It's a walk.
whatever shows up, right?
Exactly. The point of going all those places is as an educational tool to develop your appreciation of how profound and how astounding this here is, And once that appreciation is sufficiently developed, either by that kind of exercise or not, then it doesn't matter.
And also, you kind of get some perspective on this normal way of looking.
Exactly.
At it.
Yeah.
You know, you go, oh yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at this one.
Yeah. It's all just about seeing what this is. It's not about leaving this or developing this or augmenting this.
Right.
Just this right here, this normalcy.
Well, plus it's sort of fun. I mean,
It's totally
like
fun.
when I was talking about, looking out my window, I mean, it's fun.
Totally fun. Yeah. It's fun and it's an exercise of developing your sensitivity of appreciating the dimensionality and the profundity of what this is. You're pushing your own envelope of like, oh yeah, cool, that too.
Well, you people are trippy. What'd you put in the chai? What is it, like, sir?
Don't say it.
Don't ever trust the witch who makes the child. What's that? Don't trust a witch to make the child.
That's right.
Always remember, LSD stands for living simultaneous dimensions.
That was good. Did you just come up with that one?
Break that up.
He did. He does that.
What's the B part? Living simultaneously?
Dimensions. Living simultaneous dimensions.
Simultaneous.
Unless you're in Byron Bay, and then it's latte with soy and dandelion.
And what's the difference?
But when you say, Peter, when you say this, you don't mean like just, let's say, just a visual thing here. This means all the dimensions.
This means this that is present, which happens to be all the dimensions.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Right.
So in a way, there's no space really.
No.
Yeah.
No, because most experience is transspatial.
Yeah.
Only certain very heavy-handed, partial dimensions of experience present as various degrees of spatiality. Then most dimensions of experience are not. It's not that they're non-spatial; they're more aspatial. They have their own kind of spatiality, but it's not necessarily a space.
Yeah.
A spatial spatiality, as we usually think of space.
Because that space, that imaginary space is mostly just fantasy. I mean,
Sure.
it's it's like anything other than this has, to be created. By fantasy.
No, the dimensionality is there,
It's actual.
and the dimensionality means an inherent differentiation within itself.
I think I'm talking about though if I have, ideas and.
Right, a specific space per se that you're defining.
Like, this sort of
Yeah.
spatial thing going on in my mind,
Yeah.
or where I'm like. But if I actually look at that, there really isn't anything
Right.
there.
Yeah. Well, there's something there, but what there is way beyond that.
I think someone I do.
That's totally clear to me now.
I've been the radiant presence, and I've been really kind of hanging out and enjoying the presence part of the radiant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it just feels like wow.
Cool.
That's like I don't always see it or experience it quite, but then I'm thinking, okay, well, that's not a problem. So just explore, right?
Yeah.
And talk about different dimensionalities because it's present.
Yeah.
So, but what is it? What is that? What is that nature? But sometimes, in some ways, I can feel it very distinctly, very.
Sure. Of course. Yeah.
And so it's like there's all this envelope pushing, kind of very juicy, chewy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, what is the presence in sight, for example? It has a different quality.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's sort of like you can't say what it is, but that how it shows up is, how can I say it? It's like
I use these words texture and flavor. Like the flavor of presence in vision as a different flavor or a different texture than the presence within, say, hearing or thought or various other qualities of experience, which is what enables them to be differentiated. You know you're seeing something as opposed to hearing something, or vice versa, because of the texture of or flavor of the presence. But it is present, it is actual. And the way in which that is the case again is an open doorway.
Yeah.
Because presence is undeniable. It's the actuality of what is actually the actual experience. It's actual. It's here. It's present. It's undeniably that. But exactly what that is infinite. It's transcendental. So it's complete because it is actual, because it is present. It's completely accessible, but it's a jumping off point into, because you can't. It's surpassingly subtle. It's actually transcendental and really obviously so, while being so actual, so present, so available.
It's funny, it's kind of like you wanted to be on that treetop, and look down. It's like just walk to the edge of anything, the edge of anything you're experiencing, and you're looking down.
Yeah.
You're looking down into whatever just might jump off and fly.
Yeah. Any actual experience is a jumping off point. Period.
Yeah.
And exactly what that means, of course, you have to see for yourself.
Well, it's weird because what are you jumping off of? It's like you're jumping off of transcendence already.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you don't need to jump off to jump off. The jumping off is in noticing that your starting point isn't actually a point, it isn't actually a starting. Noticing that it is already that, so it's of course very slippery. But since it's transcendental, that's not surprising. I mean, jumping off into the transcendental is noticing that your starting point is the transcendental already, and that noticing is the jumping off without having to do any actual jumping or departing.
Like you said the other day, if you just close your eyes, you cannot describe what's going on there.
Yeah, sure, you're
just
gone.
Close your eyes and look and try to explain it to somebody.
Be with the actuality of what's there. Concretely just be with that is actually there.
Yeah.
And whew!
Yeah, you're gone.
You're gone. Yeah.
I've noticed, like, one of the trainings that I did about 15 years ago was astral traveling, and this partner and I, for like 10 years, would do these things called chelations, where the minute you put the hands on, you go to this other dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And then we always were trying to figure out how to merge the dimensions. Like, because we went somewhere and we knew we had been somewhere in some alternative dimension, and then we come back to this dimension, and then we want to know that we were in that dimension from this dimension and this dimension from that dimension.
Right.
And we kept trying for like 10 years. Yeah. And then the last, like say 3 months, I've realized, it's right here.
Yeah.
And it's just paying attention to those multi-dimensions.
Yeah. All dimensions are right here.
And just making up that it was somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's just kind of some kind of, well.
It's fun at first, but then it's frustrating.
Yeah, well, and to think that it had a different flavor, it did, and it really doesn't. I mean.
The distinction was in the language and in the idea,
yeah,
not in the actuality.
Well,
and it's what we started talking about at first.
Calling it dimensionalities is meaningful because there are different flavors or different textures, and there's an infinite range of textures. So it's meaningful to talk about them it's meaningful to talk about those as infinite dimensions. But exactly what you mean by any of that is gibberish, because it all collapses to this. But nonetheless, there is, at least, let's say, well, superficially isn't the right way to put it, but I'll say it anyway. At least superficially, there are all of these infinite different, dimensions of experiential texture. that are really apparently quite noticeable and obviously distinctive, and yet they aren't actually separate in any simple way. They aren't actually removed in any simple way. But exactly what they are and exactly how that all works, and again, of course, you can't actually pin down. But then you can't pin anything down, so that's no surprise.
But they are identifiable.
Well, yeah, they're actual.
They are actually identifiable.
Sure, they're actual.
You can
Oh,
go
yeah.
from this dimension to that dimension.
Oh, yeah.
And recognize you're in that dimension.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yet, but even though you can't actually find this dimension or that dimension, but still they're actual.
They're actual.
Yeah, they're actual.
But sort of the unifying is that it's all in my experience.
More presence.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not in the dimension in a way, in a
You're
way
all
I
of them.
am.
They're all in you.
Me.
They're in you. Yeah, you are the meta system. You are God that shows up to itself as all these dimensionalities.
Yeah.
I mean, like I put it, that the radiance is infinitely differentiated within itself, without ever being other than itself.
Right.
So it never departs from just being radiance, but radiance by its very nature appears as infinitely differentiated within itself, which is all these dimensionalities that we experience, all the incredible different flavors that experience can present as, and yet it's all just experience.
Yeah.
So it never departs from itself. And you are that. You are this experience that is presenting as all of these dimensions.
Right.
So they're all your dimensions. They're all your modes of being you.
Yeah.
It also kind of parallels where we started, which is that at first it's like line to line.
Yeah.
And then like over time it's sort of, oh,
Yeah,
it's that.
sure.
Much
Yeah.
less.
Because what's mind-blowing is the contrast to what you thought it was. We think of it as being this dull, boring, horrible, or stupid thing, and then we discover, wow, it's really not like that. It's really amazing. And so the contrast is a real major wow factor. But when you get that that's really what it is, then the wow factor diminishes. Not that it's any less amazing, but there's no dullness to contrast it with. So there's not a big jump. You look around and you go, oh wow, this is infinite dimensionality, and it's like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. But that's what I started from. So noticing it is not like a big jump. Like being in free fall is not necessarily so weird, but stepping off a cliff, finding yourself in free fall is a big transition. But if you're in free fall to begin with, then to go to free fall is like a non-event. It's not like stepping off a cliff where you already were off the cliff. Yeah.
Oh, look, I can drink chai in free fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here in infinity, the chai is delicious. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question about questions.
Yeah.
I certainly see the difference, in moving from one experience to another, in or out, or whether it's the mind or whether it's this or that, or whatever. But for me, at least it seems to me that presence doesn't change. Presence doesn't change.
Right.
I don't see the texture except insofar as I see the texture of that sense experience.
Right.
But I don't think I've unified the experience and the presence. But that's probably another question. But anyway, my basic question is, for me, and I'm just asking for comment, because for me, presence doesn't vary.
Right.
And experience varies dramatically.
Right. Yeah, but this is what we were talking about earlier. Presence never is a constant, and yet the nature of presence is to present as if it was infinitely differentiated within itself, which is all of the different textures and so on and so forth. But it is the presence that is that. It's not like there's presence over here and then all these textures and flavors over here.
I feel that duality still.
Yeah. When you go, I mean, you feel the presence, or you say, you notice, this is presence, presence is actual, or actuality is present, whatever. And then look at all the textures and the dimensionalities and all that, where do you go to find them? In presence. So it is presence that presents as that. So it's not like there's a one thing and another thing.
I see that philosophically.
Well, you can see it experientially by looking at where you find it. Where do you find an experiential texture, or however you're classifying it? Where do you find it? You find it in presence. In fact, you can't find it except in presence.
I guess if I called presence consciousness, I wouldn't have some trouble.
You call it anything. Consciousness.
Yeah, of course, it doesn't matter what you call it. The main thing is the experiential actuality, of course, is beyond your designation of it.
It's strange because I don't know, probably I've conditioned myself to do that, but I can think of consciousness as a unity. That is, consciousness and the experience are not separable. They're coterminous. But presence seems to be something separate.
Presence is consciousness. Consciousness is present.
Right.
Presence is a way of demystifying. Designating it as presence is a way of demystifying consciousness, because consciousness is this very mysterious, powerful thing that seems to have these potencies and functionalities and doing something. Whereas in actuality, consciousness is just here. This, which is present. So you can't find a consciousness other than presence. Presence is the sole evidence of consciousness. So consciousness is more an elaborate imputation of presence. Not that presence isn't elaborate and subtle and transcendental, but it's very obviously itself. And it's very obviously simple in a non-simple way.
So direct, maybe.
Direct, yeah. Whereas consciousness is sort of an overblown, vague, ghost-like phantasm, And so presence is the actuality that consciousness is a myth of. And that actuality, the nature of that actuality is such that it presents as being infinitely differentiated from itself, or within itself, without ever departing from itself. So all of these apparent differentiations that are present are nothing other than presence, and so it appears as infinitely manifold, even though it is one thing. Just as a concrete actuality, the simple pragmatic presence of experience, and then we're demystifying it of notions like consciousness or self or subjective or objective and all of that. It's just there is presence, there is a field of presence, and that field of presence has an infinite range of, call it textual presentations or experiential textures that it can seem to present within or as.
Field of presence, I don't think I've been thinking of it as a field. Maybe consciousness. It's just terminology.
It's terminology.
Probably also it's a lot of conditioning. My meditation has been traditionally kind of the ascetic one of denying the world.
Right.
Names and forms.
Setting up consciousness as something, and then and with some relationship to a world, and then relative priorities and so on.
Or even the bhakti way of just feeling the presence of God, as opposed to the world, but not really, not fighting with the world. Still, it's different.
So this is just collapsing all that down to one integration of this actuality, of your actual real experience, right here, right now. And then all of these, various parameters are just, aspects of or mythologies of this present fact.
Basically,
And they're unnecessary. They're unnecessary elaborations. So what I'm suggesting is to look at the fact in the most bare bones, stripped down way possible, and see what's necessary, and see if consciousness and subjective and objective and all these things are actually necessary, or if they're over elaborated assertions over something that is more direct than that. I won't use the word simpler than that because it's infinite, and calling infinity simple is a strange way to do it. But it is direct, it is actual, and it is integral. So it is itself. It doesn't depart from itself. So you're looking at it. You're looking at essentially one thing, one phenomena. And in that sense, it's simple. It is integral.
I'm fully convinced of the truth of that. But I think I've just got karma
Yeah.
that tends to separate these things.
Right. Yeah. So the remedy or the what I would recommend is just investigate, sort of bypass. Don't try to dismantle all that. Just ignore it. Leave it sit wherever it is. But just play more with the direct experience as it is, and just really feel it, be it, notice it, look at it, and let it verify that, yep, it is, sure enough, it's here and it's the way it is, and then just be with that way that it is, and sort of familiarize yourself with what that is, and you'll notice that the way in which it is integral, the way in which it does not depart from itself, and it is, it's essentially just one thing, and it's varieties of, or you might say versions of the one thing, no matter where you look. You look in thought, you look in vision, you look in sensation, you look in something you can't designate whatsoever, and you'll still find presence and experiential textual qualities that are all basically of a kind, even though they're infinitely differentiated with, against themselves, you might say. And you can't find anything but that. So it's, in a sense, it's very simple. It's infinite variations on one theme, which is presence, presenting as experiential texture, where I collapse that down to radiant presence.
You can touch presence.
You are touching presence. All touch is presence.
Right. So, but
all experience is touching presence, so to speak.
Yeah. But you can do that.
Absolutely. It's very actual. It's very available. It's not an abstraction.
I can't touch consciousness. I don't know what that is.
No, of course not.
I can touch this.
Yeah. That's the point. Consciousness and these other things are myths of presence. And it turns out unnecessary myths. You don't need consciousness for presence. All you need for presence is presence itself.
Which is really cool because, that was really a lopsided thing going on, this whole consciousness thing.
Oh, all this, and the self, and the self, and an Atman, and this. Somehow there's this looming witness over there somewhere, and what does that have to do with this here? And it's like Santa Claus. Does Santa Claus really live at the North Pole? What's at the South Pole? It's like, it's all of these. It's an elaboration. And all that just leaves you scratching your head trying to sort it out, and there's nothing to sort out. It's an unnecessary. It's an unnecessary elaboration. Whereas presence doesn't need sorting out. It's actual. It's right here. You can examine it, so you can study it. You don't need to parse it. You don't need to puzzle it. You just look at it, play with it. You can poke it.
Partially too. It's like it's beautiful not to examine.
Sure.
Because that's sort of what its beauty is in a way.
Yeah. Well, it's self-verifying, so it doesn't need examination. And when you see the way in which it is self-verified, then that instant of contact is the self-verification, and the contact is already de facto. It's already the case. That experience is the contact, so it's already a done deal. It's not like something you need to do or finish or complete or pursue. Just that it is already the finish line.
Such as you call noticing, right?
Yeah, noticing is noticing that is the case. I mean, it is the case whether you notice it or not. But if you don't notice it, you may not understand it, and so then you may think that you may have the erroneous idea that all sorts of elaborations and pursuit and needing to complete things and needing to follow up on things are somehow required in order to achieve something. But when you discover the instantaneous, the completeness, the absolute across the board inclusiveness of just the presence that already is the case, that is the finish line. That, all T's are crossed and all I's are dotted just in the presence of experience, which is already the case. There's nothing further to do, and anything further that happens is just a further instance of that case, that is the case. And so, again, it just is a continuous completeness, continuous ongoing completeness, a great completion, you might say.
Yeah, that's so great. Wow.
Peter, I mean, almost ever since the beginning of humankind, I mean, there's been billions of varieties of a religious experience of this. I mean, Buddhists, everybody, meditation, chanting, balance. But
human sacrifice.
I mean, huh?
Human sacrifice.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean,
sex cults.
drugs, all this stuff. But I mean, so I mean, I'm assuming that just by hit or miss, by accident. I mean, they experience this, right?
Of course. What else is there to experience?
Right. But I mean, they.
The question is if they notice, if they get, if you really get the way in which this is already comprehensively complete,
exactly,
just in the fact. The fact is already the sole fact, is already the final fact, and it's already is happening.
I mean, I haven't counted them exactly, but I'm estimating billions of varieties of religious experience. People keep on missing it.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
They just need a little bit. They just need a little bit. Maybe they just need a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, people say that, it's said in many contexts. The amazing thing is not realization. The amazing thing is ignorance. The fact is missing it. Given that reality is already present and it is already reality, the potency and the absolute reliableness of the fact that people are going to miss it so consistently and so across the board is miraculous.
Yeah, I know.
How can that happen?
That's the
when
miracle,
there's nothing else than reality, how do you miss it?
That's the miracle.
Yeah.
Having been in a sex cult, it's very easy to
That's it? What's the answer? Sex.
It's very easy to miss it.
Having been in a sex cult, it's easy to miss.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think all sorts of people experience this all the time, but then they go and try and turn it into some sort of religious experience.
Sure. Yeah,
That's where they get lost.
Yeah, by missing the subtleties, missing the fine points of the fact that this is all of that elaboration without needing to go to the trouble. And so they think they had to go to the trouble, and they go to the trouble, and then all of a sudden you have codes of commandments, and you have, funny names and funny clothes and funny handshakes and funny behaviors, that are necessary in order to approach the Holy of Holies that is this. Without having noticed the obvious fact that you don't actually have to do all that stuff. You can. If that's your idea of a good time, have at it. But nothing is actually achieved by that.
Well, and then they get into further complication of telling other people what to do.
Yeah, sure. We're all familiar with that. We've all been there, done that.
Both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, see, just the utter weirdness of the thing, you know, like every instant like disappears and never comes back. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I was talking to some people at the hospital today. I said, hey, look at that weirdness, you know? Like, just like look at that for a minute.
Yeah.
Like that's
But I just started looking at you.
He's supposed to be the counselor.
Yeah.
He's the weirdest one.
I'll have what he's having.
But seriously, God.
It's so funny, you know?
It is. No, it totally is. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. This is so clearly on display. It's so self-verifyingly what it is. You just have to take an instant to just notice, just like, so what is it that's happening here? And just look at that, and wow. Yeah, just like, hey, okay. Pretty friggin' weird.
Peter, I think that when things come together like that, when the dualities come together, this is just my personal history, but I think that that's what I've been referring to as silence, because everything becomes silent. In one sense, it isn't that there's no sound waves in the air, but it becomes still.
Right.
And then if I see just one thing, if just one word or one memory or one desire to do something or a impulse crops up, the whole thing just shatters. And I don't call that noise, but I do call it the oneness silence. I've always, for a long time, I've called it silence. And that I can see as unification.
Sure.
Because there's absolutely nothing there to break the unification.
Yeah. Yeah. The trick then is to see that anything that could break the unification is actually just an instance of the unification, and so it doesn't actually depart from it.
That's
And
true.
so then the silence is unshatterable,
Right.
because it would only be shattered by itself, and how can silence shatter silence?
Yeah, I see that. This is the kind of meditation that I've come to. And that's,
Good.
But the next step would be, the proper next step would be that, to see that isn't breakable.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's intrinsic. It's not something you have achieved or you need to maintain. On the contrary, it's a noticing of a condition that is objectively the case. And then you can notice that it's intrinsically the case. And once you see that, then it can't not be that. And so therefore anything that seems to be other than that is an instance of that itself, and so it doesn't actually threaten or damage or depart from that. And so the whole thing just collapses even further into unification. And hallelujah.
But if I call that something, I'm out of it.
Maybe, unless you see the calling of it is an instance of it. The calling of it is just an instance of it too, so it doesn't depart from it either. So.
Right. Well, I know that intellectually.
Yeah.
But
You know a lot intellectually.
too much intellectually.
No, you know it's all God. You know. It's not intellectual. You know that.
All God, all the time.
Yeah, no.
Not on drugs.
All God, all the time, and here you are. Whoopee.
There's an interesting thing about Buddha that I was thinking about when you were talking about Buddha. And that is the mythology of it is that he's supposed to have given his life for others 500 times. Now that's probably a mythological statement of something, but the impact that he had as opposed to just his realization seems to me, correct me if you have a different opinion, but it seems to me that he built up a character, which is just a dynamic thing, cause and effect kind of thing in karma. He built up a tremendous character, which is what had that influence, which really is apart from his realization.
Yeah, something along those lines, I suppose. I mean, I think that's pretty much what I was trying to say. In other words, too, that he had realization, and plus he had the karmic circumstances, so that it manifested impactfully.
His karma.
For whatever way that accumulated, if even accumulation is a meaningful notion, but at any rate, it was at least there, manifestly, obviously, because of the fact that it did that. If he had been unable to speak, or if he had been hit by a car or an ox cart, hit by an ox cart, 3 seconds after his realization or something, then the karma would not have had the impact socially that we see.
Right.
Well, he had no idea, really.
No.
So very well for us to hear and joke about the impact his life had. I mean, at the time, he was just going about his business, really.
No, for sure, of course. But the manifest fact that it was impactful means that the conditions were for it to be impactful were there.
Right. But I mean, in the sense that none of us have any idea what we're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So it's
in a thousand years, they'll be looking at brownianity. Or more likely, it'll be like, who? What?
There's a strange cult that drank chai.
Strange called the chai worshippers.
Crazy. They ate a lot of good food.
And of course, it works in reverse. This is probably why they made up that idea, 500 lives of that.
No,
because he had the.
Of course.
Because he had the tremendous.
Of course, because no one knows. I mean, who can authoritatively say what happened in his 500 lives, or even his one life?
I looked at the Santa Cruz Zen Center, and somebody looked up the number in the phone book, and she was having a crisis of faith in Buddhism because she was concerned about the fact that Buddha left his wife and child, and she wanted me to justify that. So you can look at his life in all kinds of different ways.
He didn't torture them. He killed them. He didn't eat them. Cook them and eat them. Look at the bright side.
Yeah.
That we know of, as far as the story goes.
Yeah. You left that part out.
crisis of faith.
Just goes to
That's a
show
good
you,
one. That's
if you're
good.
gonna have a crisis of faith, you'll have it about something.
Yeah.
To think you have any idea about how things are supposed to be is a big
about things.
is a big mistake.
If there was such a person.
You're hamstringing yourself.
That person missed something.
His name was
Well, look at that. It's just about quitting time.
This one has the city of making people puke rainbows.
Oh, that's right, made me puke
So I will puking rainbows. I wish everyone online that puke rainbows. And I also hope you also have a nice evening.